Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back, Buckeye Bar guys. Here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
I'm John.
Tonight's date is Wednesday, March 9th, and we're coming to you guys today to talk about the spring practices are here. Spring football is back. Seemed like it was a very short hiatus with no football, and now we had information press conferences yesterday. Some different media reports have been coming out now as the media was at practice yesterday. Were they at practice today, or was it just yesterday? I can't remember.
I thought they were getting availability to both days, but I could be wrong because I didn't see much about today. So they might.
I haven't seen a lot about today, but I did see a lot about yesterday.
Yeah. I definitely saw a lot yesterday. So I don't think they were there today, or there wasn't much for them to see. Maybe they only saw stretching or something. I don't know. Maybe they got them out of there quickly.
Yeah. So that's what we're gonna come to you guys with tonight. Just kind of give our thoughts about the press conferences and just some of the stuff we heard from the different media members. Pretty, just like I said, it's pretty exciting from what we've heard so far. It's just, I mean, it's March, but it feels good to have football back. It's like a nice little thing now, and then we will have the Big Ten tournament here starting up shortly, and started tonight, and Buckeyes will be playing tomorrow night. And so, isn't that correct? Right? Yeah, it's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So we'll get into you guys. We'll get you guys something this weekend to talk about basketball. As we get ready for the big tournament next week. And then Buckeyes are on football wise on spring break next week. So a couple days of practice, spring break, and then they will be back after spring break to, really get into this spring football, pads on and everything. So before we get into the press conferences, just in general, out of the three coaches, we heard from Coach Day, Coach Knowles, and Coach Wilson. Just kind of what were your just general thoughts?
Well, I mean, I thought it was funny that Coach Day said that it seemed like there was an army over there for the defensive side of the ball now. He was a lot of normal coach speak. I mean, I was happy to hear him say Jaden Ballard was one of their most improved guys that just physically, he was doing his job in the weight room, doing his job in practice. So he just has to, get it done now. Of course, he said the goal is always to have like 5-6 receivers, which obviously, that it is what it is, but you're not always in that position. So hopefully they end up in that position again, just because I want to see all those guys, on the field. But of course, if they're scoring touchdowns, I don't care if they only got 3 guys on the field.
Yeah.
Most impressed was with, Wilson and Jim Knowles, though. I liked both of their press conferences a lot. Knowles, I mean, it just immediately struck me as a guy that wants, to teach people the correct way. He wants to be teaching people his defense. Of course, he said he wants his linebackers, playing fast, playing in space, all things we love to hear. But you could just tell, the guy's getting up, showing like demonstrating how he wants tackles to be done with the microphone.
I got a big kick out of that.
You can tell he wants to be a teacher. I think that's a great thing. He said if guys aren't doing things correctly, it's kind of like a failure on himself. So he's already kind of shouldering that blame. So I mean, I was real big on that. I mean, obviously not as enthusiastic of a guy as what Kerry Combs is, but I felt like kind of like the same type of man, like teacher, honest, just puts it on himself, not going to be a hypocrite of himself. So I think it was a great hire. I mean, the guy definitely sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And I think it's going to be fun to watch, this defense grow with him. And then Kevin Wilson, of course, he's been with the team for years. Um, Said just, right now, last year, they were a good stats offense, which I thought, I mean, that was a good, honest assessment that, they got touchdowns here and there, and they got, well, a lot of touchdowns, and they got, a lot of yards, but they weren't just some like killer offense that could do whatever they wanted at their will. I mean, there was plenty of times where they were stuffed in the run game, and that's something that they got to work on. And I believe that, then they're going to, but I definitely was impressed that, he was kind of man enough to say that, hey, we had our shortcomings on offense, because we've heard it before in the past with them. They've talked about like special teams, about guys not returning the ball or whatever. And they've kind of laughed it off like, hey, I don't think our offense has had many issues, scoring over the years. So I don't think we need punt returns here and there. But, obviously this wasn't a punt return, but Kevin Wilson just honest assessment said, there are things we could be better at on offense.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I liked how, and you kind of, when you really think back on it, I mean, he's being honest with the situation. I mean, they buried Oregon on the score, or not the scoreboard, on the, stat lines. I mean, how many yards? I mean, they had a good stat line against Michigan. They had good stat lines against Penn State and against, Nebraska, but it was always in those games where they played better defenses offensively. When they got to the other side of the 50, they stalled out how many times, and that was kind of like that's where their lack of consistency was really killing them. First couple drives against Utah was the same thing till they really started hitting their stride. So I mean, yeah, no, he's definitely correct about that. And going on to Jim Knowles, I really loved, how he was talking about, the tackling and stuff, and him being the teacher. And he mentioned how, he's kind of just he's really going to ease these guys into like his philosophy. And, his philosophy can go a lot of different ways. And he said that he has it's just kind of like how, they were a 4-down line last year, so that's what they're starting with, and then we'll move on after that. But it's like we're gonna get good at every little thing until we add something onto the more to the plate,
right?
And because he said he wants players that are just reacting. That it's not either if they're thinking, then he screwed up somewhere, and like they need to just react to the ball and stuff. So I definitely like that. I love that, he's talking about the rugby tackling again. We talked about that before when Ash was the defensive coordinator. And, I love big time turnovers as much as the next person. And in this defense, you're still going to have ample opportunities to get interceptions, but I think sometimes that one of the things I've never just liked is some and more the running into people and trying to make that killer hit. I've never been a big fan of that. And then like in recent years, and this is in the pros too, it's like the first guy's there to stand the person up, and then the next guy in is trying to strip the ball. And I'm just like, especially if you have a good offense, just get the guy down. It's like, I mean, there's no point in like if they're behind the first down marker or even past the first down, just don't worry about all that stuff. Just get them down and live to play another down, another series, whatever. And I really want to, that's the biggest thing he said is they want to get back to taking good angles, attacking the correct hip that they're coming at, and just getting the guys down. And that's just to me, that's so many of their issues over the last several years where they've had suspect defenses has been into the tackling, and they just don't make teams sometimes work for it like they have to. And you have an offense that they might have been a stats offense last year, but it's an offense that has no problem scoring usually on any given series. That they have all the explosive playmakers over there. So just no need to do anything fancy. Just get the teams down off the field on third down and get the ball back to your offense. And it just seems like if they get to the philosophy of actually tackling people and just get them down as soon as they catch the ball or whatever, just be in the right position, take the right angle, right position, whatever, and get the player down, then you're going to get a lot of 30 and outs or 6 and outs or whatever, but you're going to get the ball back to your offense in a lot more, times than, maybe they've had over the last several years.
Yeah. And to kind of just expand on, him starting off with right now the 4 down line and going from there. I mean, I think that's a great approach. I think that's very smart. I think some people were kind of like bummed out when they heard that. They're like, oh, he's not actually bringing his stuff over with him. But I think his philosophy right now is like, let these guys go with what they know, let them be comfortable, and then implement, my strategy into that. So they know the terminology, but in their base where they're comfortable. So they know their assignments, but in their base where they're comfortable. So he's not, teaching them Spanish by only talking Spanish to them. He is, letting them speak their native language, the English, and he is implementing small parts at a time. And then, they'll either learn it this year or it's something that, it'll build that they'll get these piece by piece. And then it'll be something maybe more in the next year. And they kind of use more of what they were comfortable with for this upcoming season. But he's still going to have those wrinkles in there, and his philosophies aren't going to change. Like he's still aggressive. He's still going to come with a lot of different looks, a lot of different things. So I think people, you shouldn't be worried about it. I think it's going to work out fine in the long run. I honestly think it's a better approach than just, hey, let's scrap everything and this is how I want it done. He even said, I have to see what I have and I'm going to build my defense around that.
Yeah.
So I think that's an excellent approach to it. I mean, the guy's really smart. You can tell. I mean, he's just good coach, great teacher, though.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that his philosophy is going to be, these guys know 4 down. They've done 4 down. They've been recruited to do 4 down. So we're going to do that. He's done 4 down as a coach, too. So he understands that. He knows he has not only it's arguably the best defensive line coach in all of college football, but definitely the best, probably 4 down on defensive line coach. And, Larry Johnson, that's his bread and butter. So he gets that. And I think by doing this, he is going to, the Leo or Jack, whatever they're going to end up calling it, is going to get introduced. And, teams are going to have to prepare against both, because there's going to be times where they're playing 4 downs, and then there's going to be playing times when they are, 3 down with the Jack. And then there's going to be times where they're 4 down and they move into, before the snap, they move into the 3 down with the Jack. And it might even be vice versa. I mean, there could be times where, Sawyer might be up and then comes down somewhere on the line of scrimmage. And it's like, he has always, from what you've seen, he always has a lot of moving parts. And it's just always about, making the quarterback and making the offensive coordinator, making the receivers, making the offensive line have to think a little bit. I mean, his biggest thing, Wilson talks about that later in his press conference, is that, obviously the biggest things with a Jim Knowles defense is make the quarterback and make the offensive line very uncomfortable. And I think that's what he's going to do. And so I think, if they know how to run 4 down, we're going to run 4 down. And then we're going to mix in my stuff too. And we're going to just confuse the crap out of offensive lines, because there's going to be guys coming up, down. You could literally, now you hear like guys like Melton's out there playing, he could be playing. Just think about it. You have a Melton and possibly a Sawyer out there, and maybe one's up, one's down, and then they switch it like on the line of scrimmage, like before a snap. There's all kinds of crazy stuff they could do. And I think that's like how he likes to coach defensive football, that he just wants to throw so many things at you and just make you guess. Because if you're a second late then getting that ball off, you're gonna be eating dirt real quick. And I think that's what he wants.
Yeah. And fact of it is, he's never coached on a team that's had defensive line depth in recruiting like this ever before. So Larry Johnson's been way too good of a recruiter, way too good of a developer to take one of his guys, off the field without everyone knowing what they're doing. Most important thing right now is identifying the people and developing them that they can play, with their hand in the dirt, or they can stand up and be that roving defensive lineman. So got to identify those guys, get them trained, get them developed so they know what they're doing, so they can do both things. But yeah, I mean, it's just it'll happen when it happens, but he's definitely taking the right approach to it.
Yeah. And kind of going off of that, we was watching Letterman Rowe's practice report yesterday, and they kind of talked about that. I think a lot of their philosophy, and instead of maybe bringing in just tons and tons of guys like they tried to do last year, just do big time shifts and stuff like that. I think they want to get a good base of players. They probably want to have, I mean, obviously they want to be at least 8 deep on the defensive line, but they probably want to have, 4 guys that they, are pretty good with at linebacker. And they probably want to have, 6 or 7 guys that they're pretty confident, probably 3 corners and, probably like 5 safeties, 4 or 5 safeties that they're pretty confident with, and then I think they want them to kind of know a lot of different things because I think you could see where, you have 4 down linemen out there, but one of those down linemen are Jack Sawyer, so he could get up and move, or
Yeah.
Melton, he can get up and move. And yeah, and you had Court Williams out there. Is he kind of like a safety? Is he kind of like a linebacker? Seems like they're going to be safety, but I mean, from what we're hearing and from, a bunch of guys have said, I mean, dude looks like a monster right now. So he's like, just completely bulked up and, you know, took the winter workouts to heart and, I guess is just looking like a complete beast. So I think there's just a lot of different ways they can play a lot of these guys. But instead of like trying to have like 20, 30 guys ready, I think it might be more like, you know, maybe just 20 when you consider that 8 of those guys are defensive linemen. But I think it's, 15 to 20 guys that are more, kind of like there that they can just trust with to get onto the field.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last year. You can't rely on 25 defensive players for one defensive series. It doesn't make sense. Football's never been played that way. You can't do that. You got to have guys that can be out there for 3 downs and can do multiple things. You can't just have a specialty unit for each down. It doesn't work. So yeah, that's what you're saying. That's what they need to do. They need to know. They need to have guys out there that from downs 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, that if they want to show different looks, line up in different places, that a guy can line up in 2 different places and be comfortable and know how to play both.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's get into go through some of Dave's stuff. You talked about this a little bit ago. He did say he wants to roll out a lot of receivers. But coming with that is that it's about just getting the receivers ready. You first look for 1 receiver, then you look for 2 receivers, and then you look for 3 receivers, and you go from there. And so I think that's probably the correct approach about that is people have to earn their playing time. And it sounds like right now that 4 of them, possibly, 5, depending where Fleming's at, has kind of separated themselves. Seems like I've heard it now from media.
Who's 4?
I'm thinking Ballard right now because I've now heard Ballard's name a lot, and so I'm like thinking that, and they just don't move.
I still think Fleming's ahead of Ballard.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't move guys down into single digit numbers without taking some consideration that like that he can do it. I agree. But I think Fleming and Ballard right now are probably a lot closer than a lot of people think is at that 4. And it seems like Ballard's taken a lot of strides because first of all, we knew that he had a great Rose Bowl round of practices.
Yeah.
That was well spoken of. We've heard now a few media guys have talked about that. Supposedly he's been really moving himself up through the winter workouts and, doing everything right. And we heard from both Wilson and Day yesterday that they both mentioned him. And so I think that, we definitely have, we know who the 3 are when you think about, you got Smith, you got Marv, and then you're going to have Ibuka. That seems like that's the core receiver group right now that it seems like it, but is Fleming in there? He's dealt with a lot of injuries and it's kind of, hurt his development over the years. And we're now hearing a lot of things about Ballard. So is there 4 or there's 5? And, so maybe maybe now he is starting to get past 5 receivers. And, that's a good thing. That's a lot. That just means good rotations in there.
And Kia Bab, he's finally healthy.
Yeah, we're knock on wood.
Knock
I
on
hope.
wood. Prayers for that guy that he remains healthy because he's had a rough time.
And I mean that's what Day said. I mean, he basically said the kid can stay healthy. He's playing next year because he's such a big part to the team. Everybody loves him. I mean, everything you've heard over the last summer, he does everything right. It's just he's just had bad luck when it comes to injuries, and it happens with some players that they just never can get onto the field, and and it sucks when you think like you got somebody that could really make a difference, and you know you know and it just sucks. Speaking about health, he did mention some of the guys that were out, that are going to be out for the spring, guys like Harry Miller and Fryer. I think it's Friday if all for the whole the whole spring too, I can't remember. He might be out. He might just be limited.
Yeah, I think Friday might be held out the whole time.
Okay. And he mentioned a couple guys, and then they kind of talked to him about, that he was asked a couple questions about Proctor, and they basically just asked him what his philosophy was on some of these guys, if he was going to let them play or not. And, he basically said, when it comes to the older guys that have a lot of film on, they're definitely going to they're going to err on the side of healthy. We might not see Proctor this, spring if they feel like, it right now it does him no good to bring him back. Just get your mental reps, and we'll get you ready come summertime. Which I mean, if that's the case, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't want to see him get another freak accident and get him knocked out for the season when it's just spring ball right now.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like definitely, and Court's there right now. Which I mean, it sounds like obviously with them saying how it's just a safety driven defense that he needs to be there and not linebacker. I mean, that's really huge praise to say, this is driven, like this is run by our safeties, this defense, and this guy has to be one of those guys running it. I mean, that's just I mean, what a compliment for Court Williams. So I mean, that makes you feel a little bit more confident. Of course, you want Proctor, healthy, and he will be. I mean, he's not out. He's not listed as out for the spring, so he's definitely on the road to being ready. Harry Miller, that sucks because I think he's a guy that you and I, after that first year that he started in that COVID shortened season, he had a rough go. I mean, we didn't sugarcoat anything for Harry Miller that year but then we found out, he had injuries, and that it was really hard. I think he had a torn labrum or something, that it was just really difficult to, keep people at the point of contact. And that's why he had so many holding penalties. But I don't, last year, I think it was a leg thing, and I don't know what's going on with him this year. That's just a shame because I think the guy, people saw him have a bunch of holding penalties, and he got to have one game where he was a center that same year, and he had a lot of bad snaps early in that game. I think people just think of him as like some 5-star bust, and Harry's a player. I mean, Harry
he is
good. He'd be really good for our team.
I think the thing that kind of, maybe going to Wilson's press conference, I think the thing that really sucks right now for Harry is that, I mean, Donovan Jackson sounds
someone better than it came in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if he lives up to that hype this spring, and I mean, and we were hearing good things about him last year. It was just that he came in later than all the other guys there was a lot of good things being talked about him last year, but we've seen what Matt Jones can do. The way that they're talking about Donovan Jackson, I mean, you almost got to think that that's your two guards right now. And, Whippler had a good season as a center last year. So it would only be, you would think that would be kind of detrimental possibly to him, that if he doesn't deserve to get replaced, like if Harry Miller doesn't physically beat him out for center, or somebody else physically beat him out for center, like, you almost got, I mean, he had a good year. So you got to give him you got to let him build off a good season. And if nobody can beat him out, then like, I don't see where right now I see Harry as the fourth guy. If he gets healthy for a season, I just don't. I see him behind the eight ball against all those three guys, and that that's your starting interior line, and he's the next possibly the next guy up, but maybe not
But it
because
sounds like Josh Fryer was really impressive before his injury.
yeah. So I mean, they've talked about other guys too. Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah. But I mean, you and I, we kind of talked about it yesterday, by amongst ourselves that you don't get a ton of top 10 nationally ranked kids that are interior linemen. So Donovan Jackson is probably something special.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, Onto the quarterbacks from what Dave was talking about. So basically, I mean, he said what I think any of us would expected. They Stroud had a great season last year. Obviously he made he looked really good. I mean, he made some young kid mistakes, but he looked really good and overall. And but they did hold some things out of the playbook for him. And they said, and him and Wilson both said that they are gonna, he's gonna get more stuff added to his plate this year, and they're gonna go a little deeper into the playbook. That wasn't the exact words that they put it, but that was basically the gist that they're going to give him a little bit more of the playbook this year. And so, I mean, they're expecting big things out of him that, he's going to be able to handle more. And, as long as knock on wood that, McCord doesn't decide to transfer at the end of the spring, that, Ryan Day seems pretty pleased that, for the first time that he's been head coach, that he's going to have a legitimate backup, now behind that he has confidence in. And yeah, he had good praises for McCord. He said he's been looking good. He's a legit player there. So, and it always makes you, when you think back to seasons like 2014, obviously you don't know what JT and Cardell could be until they ended up having to be forced to be. But then you realize that, they were both in the system for a little bit and they both knew what they were supposed to be doing. And it ended up working out good. And, that was always the scary thing with Fields in 19, that it's like, well, what happens if he gets knocked out? You have just kind of like walk-ons and they end up getting scholarship. I get it, but they were transfer players. And
Yeah.
and then the other, and then in 20 with Fields, it was like, okay, yeah, you have freshmen now that are scholarship players, but they're still have never played it down. And then last year they're all raw freshmen basically.
I mean,
So
how do you get your entire quarterback room is comprised just all freshmen that have never thrown a collegiate pass? Like,
yeah.
I mean, and they mostly, I mean, I know Jack Miller was the lowest ranked out of all of them. I think he's a good player. But how do you get a quarterback room like that? That you get all these studs, but no one's ever done anything. Like, it's just like it was just a crazy, coincidence and occurrence for that. So yeah, like you said, McCord's had some game time now. Stroud obviously was a Heisman finalist. So you got finally Ryan Day has a bona fide legit room.
Yeah. And so, I mean, knock on wood, you don't want nothing to happen to CJ. I mean, CJ is just unbelievable quarterback, but at least, Stroud or McCourt's played last year. He started a game. He came in garbage time at different times. So, I mean, if Stroud gets knocked out or anything happens like that, at least you have confidence that, you at least have somebody that you can put into the game and possibly could still with I mean, Dave probably has to pull back the playbook a little bit, but you got the talent around him that you could at least give him the reins. You still got to go play big boy football, and I think he has the confidence that it might not be C.J. Stroud, but it's not crap neither. So
Right.
like he can possibly go win. He could possibly win it all if it God forbid would come down to it because he's had at least he's played and he's got the talent around him. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree.
And I'm trying to see what else he said. He did. I did like when he said that they are going to move Jackson around, with the receiver. So, and I like, and you always known that, Hartline does try to teach them kind of all multiple positions because he doesn't want anybody to be able just to key in on any one of them. So I think that's going to be the right way to play it. I mean, letting him kind of be moving around some. He's going to be inside. He's going to be outside. He's primarily probably going to be inside. But he's going to get outside time opportunities too. And make it harder on the defenses because they know that he's probably the primary receiver. But it's gonna that when you by moving him around and stuff, you're gonna catch teams and really bad double teams on him where somebody that probably an accident by moving them around, you're actually going to catch teams in accidental triple teams. Because somebody's going to pull off the thinks that they're supposed to pull off and they weren't supposed to pull off, and you're going to have one of those other good receivers just be wide open
or hell, you motion him closer to the line of scrimmage. Like there's so much you can do with him still. So yeah, I mean, he's your best player on the team, or at least receiver. Yeah, absolutely, you got to move him in and out. Don't let it be predictable. And like you said, by doing that, someone's going to make a mistake on defense.
I think then the last couple of things we're going to focus on with Day is that it was very interested when he started really talking about that the leadership issues that he felt that they had from last year. So basically they asked for volunteers who wanted the opportunity to be leaders on the teams. They took volunteers and they got a 24-man committee basically of leaders, and they broke the team down to 12 squads, and they gave each squad 2 leaders, and they were basically responsible for their squad. And you had guys late, that was on you. If you had guys not trying hard enough, that was on you. And every little thing. And I even think that he did say that the whole squad would have to do community service on weekends if they were whatever, if they weren't living up to their standards. I think maybe that was just if they were late or something like that. But yeah. I mean, I think it's a good approach, and these aren't the captains, but obviously this is where I think this will be where the group of captains are born from. So that how many captains they decide to go with, 3, 4, 5, or 6, because it depends every year how many captains they really have. That I think it's going to be coming from this group, and and it's a good thing because they did talk about that. Probably the areas that they were not where they needed to be last year was in toughness and leadership, and they really focused on leadership in the press conference. But it seems like the toughness part of it, they let Mick have his way with them, and they kind of got back to some old school. It's going to be a very painful period for everybody over the last 7 weeks, but I like that with the leadership. You got to give some of the responsibility back to the players. And like, I respect when I hear guys like Jim Knowles and, when they say that they take responsibility for, their guys not knowing where they're supposed to be. But at the same time, they need to take responsibility too. The players, that can't be all on the coaches. You're the one that has to play. And so that you need to have responsibility out there, and you need to have leaders out there that, will get in your face at halftime that be like, we're playing for like crap right now, and we need to play better.
Well, I mean, fan perspective, yeah, Ohio State has never shied away from showing how guys have acted, throughout the season for one of their hype videos, correct? So as a fan, I did not see any sort of, player leadership until some clips from the Rose Bowl. I mean, and you heard it too, that no one was yelling at them halftime in Ann Arbor. I'm sure nobody was yelling as a player stood up in the Oregon game and yelled at them. And a lot of it, I mean, I don't know how much, if you could have won those games or not, but you're only down 14-13 to Michigan at the half.
Yeah, something like that.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's not something crazy. I think it's that. So, I mean, if you just have one guy stand up like, hey, we can't lose to these guys. We're better than these guys anyways. Maybe that would have made the difference. I don't know. I mean, you could say what you want about how that game ended up. It was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. I mean, they could have, so yeah, that was something I was very, I thought that all year, that I was very unimpressed that it just didn't seem like, the guys with C's on their shirts actually wore stepping up and trying, get the most out of the other players. And I'm not trying to take shots at them.
No.
It's kind of what it was though. And I'm glad that was something the coaches identified also, that, we need to have tougher leadership on this team.
And I don't necessarily, I mean, I do like that they are giving ownership to the players. They need to have a sense of responsibility. That it is their team. But, when you kind of listen to, just going off of this, when you kind of listen then to Wilson, what he was talking about later, like they asked him, they're like, when did you notice it? And he said that he first noticed it in uh February. So like, if you're noticing it that early before spring, and I get it, you're going right from a national championship and a COVID season where you're basically not practicing, and then you got to try to practice again. Like, I get it that there's a lot of mismatching there, and that's what he mentioned that, but I don't know if all the coaches recognized it. I don't know if Coach Day recognized it or not, but obviously Coach Wilson did. And, I hope the coaches were talking about that. And maybe it seems like they kind of didn't. And
yeah,
that maybe if one of the coaches were recognizing it, I think probably a couple of the coaches were recognizing it. So, hopefully, by doing what they did this year, and this is kind of a blueprint going forward, this works. And then they kind of now got a blueprint, because that's, all coaches have to learn that. Trussell did things at different when, once he got really going at Ohio State, but he had a big coaching career in front of him too, or behind him. Same with Meyer. Meyer was around for a while, so that those guys brought a lot of experience in from past coaching jobs. Ryan Day was his first head coaching job, and it's tough to be in for Ohio State. I mean, nobody was. I hope nobody was like trying to, code over that or whatever, that there's a lot of things and you got to learn really fast. And I think he is learning. And I think so this was a good step. I think this is something now he's kind of bringing into, the program that, we'll do this, you guys you're not all going to be captains, but we're going to do this leadership committee. And, and you guys are in charge of your squads. If they're not living up to their level of where they should be living up to, well, you all are in trouble then. You all gotta, and that will motivate them. So I'm glad to see this.
And you know what that's going to create, though? It's going to create more guys on the field that are going to step up and have a voice that they don't need to have a C on their shoulder to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to have more guys that are going to step up, take responsibility in game. And I just you kind of just alluded to it. Ryan Day, I mean, I think this offseason is just showing his growth into becoming a big time coach. I mean, with leadership, just trying to make more guys, accountable so they get that responsibility during the game. Like, hey, I got to be able to make the play. I got to be the one to help my team out here. We can't shy away from or not discuss, him changing the defense. And I mean, when he came in, it was like, this is my defense. It's Jeff Hafley's defense. This is what we're going to run. Kerry Combs, you're going to run that. Yeah. And then he, without saying I made a mistake, he said I made a mistake. When they talked about in the very first press conference about Knowles hire, he said, Jim's going to be able to run his defense. I'll let him do what he wants to do. I'm not bothering with it. I'm not interfering with that. And then with all these analysts being hired to make sure that it's successful.
Yeah.
And these hires in this offseason, I know you know how much I've loved every single one of these moves. How whether it be, a young guy that has kind of been proven, but now he gets a shot at the, the big times. Guys that have been established other places. I think every single one's been a home run. So,
and I love all the damn his on the field assistants, his quality control guys off the field, so all these different guys, and that's growth on Ryan too. That he's seeing how some of the other places around the country do it, and that takes a lot. Gene's talked about it before, where he's not, you have to prove those things to him before, he has to see. I mean, and Gene sees it too. I mean, he sees that it's working in other places in the country. But when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, when he says, you got to give these guys important jobs. This is, because the more coaches you bring on, that you're adding a lot more risk to your team.
Oh yeah,
because you're bringing on. If you're bringing on crap that are going to be breaking rules and stuff to, do NCAA violations, that's just going to cost you at the end of the day.
right.
So so yeah, if you're going to add the risk to the team, you better be giving them serious jobs. And, and they are. And so Ryan Day basically, he's coming with the mindset as I'm bringing in an established defensive coordinator that knows what he wants to do. He's obviously, you just on Oklahoma State's rankings this year, he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. But he's going to have talent that he's never had before. But at the same time, we're going to bring him in. I'm going to give him, some good, and I'm going to give him some good hires in the coaches. But at the same time, I'm also going to give him a bunch of staff that, and I'm going to let him pick a lot of his staff, and they're going to be guys that are comfortable with him. I mean, he brings 3 guys over from Oklahoma State. He brings 2 guys over from Duke. I mean, these are guys that have all coached with him in the past, and then with the cherry on top, he gets an experienced transfer player that was at his last school. So it's like, right. Yeah, so he gets a bunch of guys that's going to at least help him get this defense implemented. And, they might actually have a shot here that this defense, I mean, I'm not going to say that they're going to be full blown Jim Knowles' ready defense by the time Notre Dame rolls around, but, they still will have the weapons defensively and offensively to beat Notre Dame, and they're going to have that all year. So
they got Ohio State recruits. So you don't need to be Oklahoma State last year. You need to have some sense of some idea of this defense and just be able to play. I mean, you still got the better players.
And I think by mid-season, when some of the growing pains are out of this defense, they're probably going to be at the place where he kind of wants to be. And then, that's going to be scary down the stretch when he really gets to start bringing in some of the stuff he really, really, really wants to do. When, these guys, when it just starts clicking and that, they get it. And, and they're not going to, even if they look great through the spring, there's going to be some growing pains early in the season, but I think they're going to get it a lot faster because of all these little things that Day did with bringing in this extra staff.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about Knowles earlier. Just one of the couple of this, just a little the different things we want to add. Just a couple of things he said. I liked his teach, motivate, demand comment that he said, maybe when he was younger, he was demanding too early, but now he realizes he has to teach these guys what they need to be doing, and he has to keep doing it. Teach until they're ready, and then you motivate. You give them the carrots, and these are your incentives. Go, motivate them, and then when they understand it, when they have the motivation, then that's when you demand the excellence. And you don't demand the excellence first. You build them up to that. And, so I like that approach. And he wasn't he's not a rah guy like Carey is. And, of course, everybody knows my feelings on Carey. I mean, I love Carey. He was an excellent coach, and he's an excellent recruiter. And he was always had his guys when, especially when he was the secondary coach, he always had his secondary guys motivated to play. And, they all kind of lived off of him. That, he was just that guy. I remember him on 85 yards and, through the heart of the South, like against Bama, when they do the slow-mo, I mean, you see that white head of his just jumping up and down the sideline. That, that was Kerry Combs. So, Jim Knowles ain't going to be that guy, but what Jim Knowles is he's a smart guy that seems like he probably has a very tough side about him too, because he's brought that up multiple times about, that's a good thing about Tanner coming in, that from Oklahoma State, that at least he can tell them, like, hey, that's just Coach Knowles, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that he's a football coach. I'm sure he can turn it up to 100 when he has to on the football field.
Sure.
So I would definitely like that comment.
I heard how he is super intense in practice, and then he's cool as can be during the games. So
if it works, it works, man. That's He said he was very impressed with the athleticism on the team. So I think that's probably been a big eye opener to him. He never said anything bad about Oklahoma State or Duke or Cornell or anybody, but he you could definitely tell just kind of reading between the lines of the things he said that he has weapons that he's never had before. This is like a full loaded arsenal. So he's got a lot of things to his, that's going to be handed to him that he's got a full garage of Ferraris and Cadillacs and even the big uglies. Those aren't little like dinky trucks. Those are the big like the Rams. That's not like these are expensive toys that he gets to play with.
Absolutely.
And so I loved when he said he was impressed with the athleticism, but now he needs to mold them. So it's like, all right, you guys got it where it counts, but now listen to me, do what I tell you to do, and you guys are gonna be freaks that are just like. And he's in probably some of the things that he tried to do at Oklahoma State, where that their thing was always bounce guys out to the outside and then try to make tackles. He's going to have little different things, and I don't know which I heard. One of the other one of the beat reporters say this. I don't remember which one on one of their podcasts, but he's going to have things that maybe he doesn't. Some of the strategies that he had at Oklahoma State, he might be able to do different strategies now just because, he just has the better athlete out there. And so definitely looking forward to that. He said he wants to see Ronnie Hickman and Court Williams on the field together. So
yeah, so do I.
Me too. I mean, and I do know who said this as I was listening to the Buckeye Weekly, and Tom Ward did say it's like, Rodney Hickman was one of the few good things that we had on our defense last year. So like, and I agree with that statement. That was, I feel the same way. So yeah, I want Rodney Hickman on the field a lot too. And if they could get him down to that nickel type safety and Court to be that, the bandit safety. That's okay. If it works and you can have maybe Josh Proctor or one of the other guys as your back safety, I think he the adjuster, that's what he called him. That works for me. If it works, it works, and I just want to see it work. So
absolutely, yeah. I'm thinking about a world of the hitting that comes across when you have Josh Proctor, Court Williams, and Ronnie Hickman roving the field together. It's just sounds wonderful.
And I think the biggest thing is going to be if Ronnie can cover to the point. I mean, then that safety is more the cover side. I mean, Court's more the bandit, sounds like the more the thumper, and the nickel's more the cover one, and so I think Ronnie will have to take on more coverage things than but he was always decent. I didn't think he was bad. He wasn't a liability, and I mean he wasn't sometimes, but I think a year of growth, he'll be fine with that.
No one outside of Burke and Brown were great at coverage last year, so it's like he'll learn it.
Yeah, I think he can.
Their safety coach, he actually was the cornerback coach at Cincinnati last year, and he had 2 Thorpe finalists. So I think they got a good guy that's going to help teach them.
Yeah. He was talking about Cade Stover. Cade Stover came up multiple times, but just off. He said he was tough. You said he's definitely going to put him. He knows how. He wants to go fight. He thinks he could morph into the Leo. It seems like could be a couple guys there if they, once that gets all, integrated to the defense. But they said they definitely want to put him on the attack. And so, I mean, that's some high praises for Cade. I mean, I loved watching Cade in the Rose Bowl. I know we're limited at tight end, but I mean, I think he's just a natural fit on defense, and he just needs to play on defense. And
Kevin Wilson sounded like he's made peace with Cade Stover's not coming back to that side of the ball, because he identified 2 blocking tight ends and 2 pass catching tight ends.
So. And then at the last question, where he's like, politically, I can't really talk about it, or what, however he put it, that he's on the defense.
Sounds like he made peace with it. I mean, I think he's a good blocking tight end. I think he's a good athlete, so he can do both things, but I love his heart. He's built for defense.
Yeah. No, moving on to Wilson. I'm trying to see some of the stuff we haven't really talked about, because we did do a lot on Donovan and Stroud already. I thought the funny thing he said is that they've been looking up, the offensive staff have been looking at Oklahoma State cut-ups to try to figure out.
Yeah.
So I mean that sounds kind of weird, but I think it's great because that's competition, man, and that's like,
right.
This guy ain't coming in here and he's not going to beat us, like, he might go beat everybody else this season, but he ain't going to beat us.
Well, Kevin Wilson wants to prove that, he still has one of the best offenses in the country.
Yeah. He talked about, you think that what a lot of people don't realize is that, a lot of their guys are only 2-year guys, and maybe a couple 3-year guys, and that's kind of shows you where a lot of the depth is. Or they have tons of depth, but they were very raw and young last year, and so you usually get a lot more guys, even at Ohio State, you usually get a lot more mixed in guys that are 4-year kids.
I think he said that if you're like a 4-year guy on this team, it's like you're a grandpa.
Yeah.
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 So. I know. And you usually do have a lot of 4-year guys or like 4th-year players. And then you got a couple 5th-year guys mixed in with that. And that's just something that this team really still doesn't have. I mean, they got a lot of guys with playing experience, starting experience, but they're still young.
Yeah. I like what he said. And I know he even admitted this. This is like, could be biased because, he's not, or is not trying to be biased because he's the tight end. He's their coach, but he thinks a lot about where the tight end depth is where they're going to end up going offensively, that, they need to, it sounds like he wants to stay out of 10 personnel as much as possible, where, it's 4 wide receivers, and, and every now and then if they go into 10 and they have 4 wide receivers out there, that's fine. But he's like, that leaves your quarterback kind of blind. It leaves possible open hits on the quarterback when you type of, go into that type of offense. So he definitely wants to be in 11 a lot. And, he would like to get to the point where, he feels good that they're in 12 personnel at different points in the game. Yeah. So that means he has to have 2 tight ends ready to go. And, so, yeah, I do like what you said, that he has some ideas of who his blockers are, and he has some ideas who his pass catchers are. And, that's good. And, I mean, losing Ruck is a big loss, and they lost some big ones the year prior to that too. And so it's, this is now the year to see, if these guys are ready to go, some of these other guys, because, a lot's going to be dependent on them because, I mean, I get it that you have a lot of studs in that offense, but you don't want a weak tight end out there that could be a bad blocker, or a weak tight end that's going to drop passes that are going to be easy first downs, because, that could kill the momentum of the offense.
Oh, that's absolutely somewhere you can't have a weak link in the chain. Like that's, you can't just have them out there just to have a tight end out there if they can't, like you said, A, block, or B, catch passes.
Yeah. He said the biggest thing that they definitely want to work on is, they want to be more consistent in the running game, which, I mean, we've all talked about. I mean, that's obvious. If they get that down to where their offensive line blocking is to where they need the run blocking part of it's where it needs to be, and, they get, the running backs, going, then, that's a big deal. And, they talked about, I can't remember if it was, I believe it was him. He's the nickel, then it's going to be a home run, right? Yeah. We're talking about Trey. I couldn't remember if it was him or Day. But he, he talked about that, Trey just has, Trey gets a little impatient on some of that stuff, and he just needs to realize, just get your yards, and eventually the home run's going to open up. Right. And so if they're going to give you 5 yards, take your 5 yards, and don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good offense, so get your yards and line up for the next play. And If you average, if you get 5 yards, you're 5 yards away from a first down. It's better than trying to rush something that's only going to get you 1 or 2 yards or possibly a negative play.
If you miss the play and you're only going to get 1 yard out of it, you might as well have just taken the play that was set up, the blocking that was set up, and get your 5 yards. And I mean, with Trey Henderson, how explosive he is, and just if you trust the process, I mean, there's going to be times though that a lineman's going to get there and they'll hit that guy that where the 5 yards is, and Trey's going to bounce it for 15, 20, 50, whatever he does.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, Kevin Wilson was 100% correct on that.
And they're going to have I think it's obvious now they're most likely going to have a much better interior offensive line than they did. And so, 5 yards, nickel, possibly then the home run. Don't worry about trying to get $1 every time. Eventually the nickels will add up to the dollar. And so he, and one of those plays, you're right, and it's going to be 5 yards. It's only going to look like it's going to be 5 yards, but Matt Jones or Donovan Jackson's going to get out there, and he's going to take that linebacker out that's there, and and Trey Henderson, when that dude gets into the secondary, he almost is gone at that point. Like if he finds his lane, like I don't care what angle you think you're going to, especially most of the teams he's going to be up against, that whatever angle you think you're going to be on, you're in a bad angle. Like he's gone at that point. And so, just take what they give you, and, your home run hits are going to come when they come. And so
I think if Trey Henderson has room for like 10 yards, that's going to be what, 30?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just the runner he is.
Yeah. And then just the last thing I want to talk about, Wilson. They did ask him about kind of if there's too many chefs in the kitchen. You got a receiver coordinator, running coordinator, you got the offensive line coach who was a coordinator, you're a coordinator, and then Ryan Day calls the offense. Is there's too much in there? And he did make the joke, at least we're coordinated. So I thought that was funny. He says that, they all work together. They all are pretty open with each other. They ask questions with each other. There's things that Heartline sees that he's not seeing. And, Heartline tells him hey, we could do this. It'd be better for the receivers if we did this. And, and so it seems like it seems like even before Fry came in that they all had a pretty good rapport with each other. That I don't think there was ever a thing. So I don't really see any issues. It seems like Fry is mixing it in pretty well with everybody so far. So, it seems like they've all had pretty good rapport with each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's one decision maker. It's Ryan Day. I mean, there can't, I've never shied away from believing that you're in a worse spot from having more, the most amount of talent possible around you. So you're not in any sort of disadvantage because you have a lot of good coaches, working together. And I get it. You got all your run game coordinators, whatever, pass game coordinator, but Ryan Day makes the decisions. So everyone learns from each other and then they execute.
Yeah. Well, I have no more things I really wanted to hit from the press conferences. Anything that come into your mind that you want to mention before we get on out of here tonight?
No, I think we covered everything. Just so glad that Buckeye football, it is kind of back. It's still like spring football is kind of a tease because you get to that spring game and then you got to wait a little bit longer after that. But it's definitely going to be an exciting couple weeks. Can't wait for the spring game and just can't wait to see learn and grow.
Yeah. And then not only is it a tease, but then they actually tease you in it too, because they start you off and then they go on spring break. And it's like, you just got my hopes all up. My hype levels at, ceiling right now. And then it's like, okay.
Hype level hasn't been this high since the end of last year.
Yeah. So at least it always falls in the same thing with basketball in the tournament. So that's always that's a fun thing too. So we at least have that. It'll be look forward to hopefully the Buckeye
Sorry, you keep talking. I'm sorry, you keep finish your thought. I was just saying, do we have a official game now?
I don't know if they might be done by now. Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the Buckeye basketball team, seeing how far they can go into the tournament, and just
Now it's still early in that game. It's still 12 minutes left in the second half. 38-38.
okay. So I think with that, we're gonna get on out of here. So take us out.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping in tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Sorry about the voice, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.